What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel and check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to speak on some recent podcasts that I watched. It was the Run It Back podcast, right? And they were talking about the trade that the Wizards made to obtain Trae Young, right? And Isaiah Thomas was on there, and he said some things, some really interesting things about the Trae Young trade to Washington. I think anytime a player gets traded to Washington, to me, I just think that's like it's not really good for their career. And the reason I say that is because Washington, they haven't been relevant in years. Like every once in a while, the Wizards will have, they'll have a team that might make it to the playoffs. But other than that, they're not really serious about putting a team together and being consistently good, right? And I don't know, that's like from an organizational standpoint. That's Washington is not a place where you want to go. Even if you're a franchise ball player and you feel like you can build there, you don't want to go there because like management is not really concerned about that. They more so concerned about like putting butts in the seats than they are winning basketball. So with that being said, man, I thought Isaiah Thomas touched on some things. Some some things Isaiah said about this situation, with trade that I agree, and some things I disagree with, right? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play the audio from the show and interrupt it, when I think that something I want to add to it.
Attention last night. There was a little bit of a trade happening
Yep.
mid-game, as a matter of fact. Trae Young, officially a Washington Wizard. CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert, friend of the show, heading down to Atlanta. I'm gonna start with Isaiah because he is here. I want to know your reaction watching Trae sort of walk away from the bench. Kind of awkward moment, no?
It's very awkward and, very, in my opinion, very unprofessional to trade a player like that during the middle of the game. It happens. But, I just think the Players Association right now, they need to get a better handle on how trades are made, how humane the treatment is for the player, and also for the teams. A lot of times the players are finding out via shams, or someone in the audience will know before they do. They have family. These are human beings, and they're a lot of times we like to use the words assets, but let's not forget that these are human beings with family, and there needs to be some parameters around when and how a trade is announced. And there needs to be some protocols that are developed, and the Players Association needs to get a little bit more heavy-handed around that.
Yeah.
All right, so the way that Trae Young was traded, and it was announced like during the game and stuff like that, right? That was done on purpose. That's done on purpose. Like sometimes if you have a relationship that's not really good between the player and the organization, the organization do things like that to, number one, to embarrass the player and just to send a message, that like to let everybody know, like they're not going to come out and say, well, he was a nuisance while he was here, or he we didn't like him and we didn't get along. They're not going to say things like that publicly, but they will do stuff like this to embarrass you, and or not just embarrass you, but just really just to get next to you and to get under your skin. So that it was done on purpose. I don't know like what the players organization will be able to do, because if somebody wanted to do things to irritate and get under your skin, then if they'll find a way to do it. And this was a way for the organization to do that. They just, Trae Young was not getting along with them, and so that's why the trade was done that way. It could have been avoided. And the fact that it wasn't avoided means that it was done on purpose.
I think there's got to be some level of balance and mutual respect between owners and front office and players. But I'd say when you look at this trade, Are you shocked that there wasn't at least a couple picks, one pick at the value? Should the Hawks have done this a couple of years ago when his value was maybe higher? Like, why now for CJ and Corey?
The player, in the organization, they wanted to part ways. And when it's known public like that, that they want to part ways, you and Boogie know that the trade value goes down. And also, if they'd have made this trade a couple of years ago, they definitely would have got more for it. But the way the Hawks are playing without Trae, they're a little taller. They have a little bit more size, and they're definitely a much better defensive team without him. So it made the trade possible. I think CJ brings a lot of veteran experiences to that Hawks team. And I think Trae gets a chance to go to Washington and kind of build what he wants to build there and see if he can replicate what he did in Atlanta. Because when he got to Atlanta, it was a franchise that wasn't doing well. Took them all the way. I think they went to the Eastern Conference Finals one year. But since then, it's kind of been downhill.
Yeah.
All right. So look, when he said that CJ McCollum is going to the Hawks, right? And definitely with CJ McCollum, his veteran leadership, the Hawks get a better, that's a better situation for them. Like, he's not as ball dominant as Trae, and he's a better defender than Trae, so that the Hawks do get better. Now, as far as Trae going to the Wizards, the thing is, and that's why I don't like Trae going to the Wizards for his career, because the Wizards are going to allow Trae to play the same way he played his early days in Atlanta, which is not winning basketball. Like I said, they're more so in DC. They want to put butts in the seat. So if you see a guy like Trae who's up tempo and he's handing out a bunch of alley oops and stuff like that, that's exciting basketball, but it's not winning basketball over the long haul, right? And so they're not going to require Trae to get any better. They're just going to let Trae do what he do, and they're going to be able to live with that. And it's about, for the Wizards, it's about like playing, like I said, entertaining more so than it is trying to win. Where Atlanta looks like they're going to be trying to win, trying to get to the playoffs and stuff like that. And that's, I don't know, if Trae is not really trying to get any better at the point guard position, and he feel like, he just want to run and throw alley oops and stuff like that and shoot the three, and put up some numbers. And yeah, DC is the place that, that is going to be good for him. But, from a standpoint of wanting to get better as a ball player, you're not going to be able to do that in DC, because they don't really care about that.
Boogie, yeah, you guys, I mean, you're watching the same thing we're all watching, but you've lived that life. Like, what was your reaction seeing how it went?
I didn't like it. More so.
Wait, before you talk, Boogie, let me just tell you, man, I love you. I'm sending you a big ass hug. That is my dog.
Appreciate you, OG.
Okay, then.
But I didn't like it. I'm piggybacking off of OG. It should be more of a mutual respect. He's done a lot for that organization with the 8 years that he was there. 4-time All-Star, took him to a conference finals. I just feel like, much more respect was due to this kid and the situation that's happening in front of him. But I don't think it's the worst situation.
You know what? I always think about when players say, well, I did a lot for this organization. What Boogie just said. I was a 4-time All-Star. Teams don't look at it that way. They say, they look at it like, look, we drafted you. We gave you the opportunity to and the platform to display your skills, and so, and you were well compensated for. So teams, like, it's like having a job, doing your job, you get your paycheck at the end of the week, and then you say, well, I did a lot for this company, but the company also paid you. So it was mutual, right? And so when you want to negotiate and you want to and you want, or you looking for a situation where you're looking for loyalty, like, they're not going to be loyal to that, because that it was a transactional relationship. You played hard the way you were supposed to. We paid you, on Tuesdays when you're supposed to get paid. So, you can't say, well, I did a lot for this organization. They don't teams. You can't lean back on that and say, well, a team owed you any more than what they pay you. So
for everyone or for specifically Trae?
Specifically for Trae, I could care less about this Hawks organization. I thought he should have left 2 years ago. I've spoke on it time and time again that I wanted him to get out of that situation before, all the blame was shifted towards him and they start trying to drag his name through the mud. So I saw this situation brewing, but I do have faith that he has better basketball days ahead. This isn't the worst situation. He gets a fresh start. He gets to, start with a new situation, a new group, a new young up-and-coming group. And I think, the plans moving forward, it'll be a better situation basketball-wise for him. So I don't think this is the worst situation, but I didn't like the way it was handled.
Yeah, and I always said that I think Trae Young is going to be best when he's a second or third option. That's not going to happen in Washington. So that's my only concern. It's kind of a lateral move for him. He's going to go there. He's going to put up big numbers. They do have some pieces. They do have an opportunity to get a really good pick this year and kind of that fresh start like you were just talking about where he can go there, be the face of the franchise. Atlanta moves on from him, now makes Jalen Johnson the franchise. They add a vet guy like CJ. Now there's talks to they go after Anthony Davis. So I think it works for both. I do think Washington, though, not having to get up any picks at all for
they won this trade
for a superstar.
All right, let me say, like Chandler, what Chandler Parsons just said, though, like is what I said earlier. Trae, you as your number one, Trae can't carry you to he's not going to play winning basketball at from your number one point guard position. He's going, if he's the number one option, your team is not going to go very far. But if he's your number, I would say 3 option, like Chandler Parsons just said, then that means that you have a really good team, and you have a guy who is facilitating the offense in Trae. That's when Trae is at his best. That's when a point guard is most valuable to a team. But anytime you have a point guard who is your leading scorer, is usually not a good sign. That means that you got guys, big men, who running up and down the court not getting the ball, and they're playing defense, and they don't feel like they're a part of the team or maximizing their their abilities on the team. So Trae gonna put up some numbers in DC, but he won't have any success with that style of play. And I think like nowadays the NBA they're getting back to the way they played like in the 80s and the 90s, like where point guards were point guards. So they set the offense, and they had assists. Point guards, and they had to play defense. Like Trae plays no defense. He don't play any defense. And let me get back into, because Isaiah is actually going to talk about like how point guards it's up to point guards to play defense.
Oh, weird, yeah.
I can't not think that Washington won this trade.
You cannot.
No, did.
They didn't?
No, they did win the trade.
Oh, I was going to say,
They
wait,
absolutely won.
Yeah,
the trade.
I like
Yeah.
this for Washington. And now you add Trae to that core and that group with the top 5 pick, and you can go and grab like an AJ. Like now they're on to something.
Look, I know a lot was said yesterday, and obviously you want to put people in the best light, right? So you've got Trae Young out there being like, or Sham's reporting it anyways, that he wants to be in Washington and all that. Now there's a lot of money stuff that's going to come into play, whether or not he stays in Washington. Does he play this season? Do they sit him this season? Do they worry about their pick?
Yeah.
Like what are we thinking is about to happen in that?
See, it sounds kind of backwards. I don't think he plays much this year, and I think they have to lose. If they're not top 8, they lose their pick. They could get a really good pick. This draft is pretty deep. When you look at Peterson and Boozer and AJ, like they want the highest pick possible. And then starting next year, they're thinking playoffs, like with that core and with that group. So it's interesting because he's got the $49 million option. I can see them extending him. They're not going to make this trade for no reason. So I can see him being there long term. What I found was interesting is him saying he wanted to be in Washington. Like
You had to say that, right? Kind of.
Did he want to be there, or do you want to be there because they wanted him there? Like that, I don't know. But he's there now, and I think it's going to be a solid move.
You want who wants you.
Exactly.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Yeah, so basically, man, I just think that Trae going to, to the Wizards, I just think that it's not going to require him to do. I don't know if he's going to fix his game. Whereas though, and some people think that, all right, if I'm the number one option, then that means I'm the we can win. But it's not all about being the number one option. It's about being the best player. I mean, you know, the best you can be, or put your team in a position to win. And as Trae, number one option at the NBA level, you know, he's not gonna be able to do it. He's not gonna be able to carry his team, you know, have any success, and especially as he get older. Then he don't play any defense. So Trae is the third option, but in DC they'll allow him to be the first option because they're not really concerned about winning. So this is not good for his career. I remember what DC, the Bullets, they had a guy by the name of Michael Adams. You know, Michael Adams was a really good basketball player, but he was, you know, and he was their number one option, and he put up a lot of numbers and stuff like that. And this was like was Michael Adams in the late 80s or he was in the 90s, I think, the early 90s, and he put up some numbers for the Wizards, the Bullets. It was the Bullets when Michael Adams was playing. But they didn't never go anywhere. You know, they didn't, you know, win anything of significance with a point guard, a shoot first guard. And I think Michael Adams probably was like about 6 foot, 6'1", could shoot, could score. But, you know, you're not going anywhere if your point guard, like I said, is your leading scorer most of the time. So that's my take on it, man. Y'all make sure to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, and I'll check you all out in the next video. Peace.